This is the BS4 podcast, and I'm your host, Bria Villa. Welcome back to another episode of the BS4 podcast. I am your host, Bria Villa, and I am so excited to have you here today because we're talking about quite literally one of my favorite topics. And I feel like so many people struggle with this. There's so many misinterpretations of what this truly means. And so I'm really excited to talk about it because I feel like I've actually done a good job of figuring this out and implementing it in my life. And I'm excited to share the ways that I do that and how this even came to be and really the different ones that I've set for myself. So today, the B is for boundaries. And I am so excited to talk about boundaries because this is a topic. It is so hard sometimes, especially when you are someone like me who is a total people pleaser. I have been my whole life. I hate when people are upset with me. I hate feeling like I have to say no to people. I hate feeling like I'm a limitation for someone or feel like I'm a burden to somebody. And so really implementing boundaries in my life was so difficult. But as soon as I really learned how to do it, I started to get really good at it. And now I can't imagine my life without the certain boundaries that I've set. And so we're going to talk about boundaries today. We're going to talk about, like I said, what it means, the different ones that I have that I'm really, really, really stern about. And then also just the different ways that it's played out in my life and how it's impacted me. And then hopefully walking away from today, you feel like you learn what they are, know how to implement them, and also take the stigma away from them because I feel like people look at boundaries in such a negative way sometimes. And so we're going to kind of peel the layers back on that and try and reframe our perspective. So like I said, today the B is for boundaries. If you are listening, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. I appreciate you being here. And if you're doing one or the other, check the other one out. So if you're listening, check out YouTube. If you're on YouTube, listen. Drive in your car, take a little drive and listen to this podcast because again, this is one of my favorite topics and I'm really excited to talk about it. So when we think about boundaries, I feel like a lot of people think that it's you pushing everybody away. Like, I don't want to do this, or I don't want certain people in my life, or I just want to stay away from certain things. Or like, it's almost like as if you're revoking access to yourself. And I feel like that has a negative connotation with it. How I view boundaries is kind of like guardrails, essentially. There is a direction that I want to go in, and boundaries are set in place. That way I stay on track and stay going in that direction. Boundaries are not to be exclusive or to cut people out of your life, this, that, and the third, or at least that's not the initial intention. Boundaries are to ensure that you are going in the right direction and staying on track and going that direction. And if there are people or places or circumstances that are going to get you off track in the direction you want to go in life, then so be it. And that's what boundaries are for. So I think of it literally like in my mind, how I view boundaries is like railroad tracks. And literally the rails keep you on track. That is a boundary. Anything outside of those rails is going to have you veering off and going into a space that you don't want to be in when you have a goal of getting somewhere. And so the actual definition of boundaries, I always like to look stuff up and make sure that I'm articulating it in the most accurate way possible. And so the definition of a boundary is a limit or edge that defines the extent of something and separates it from other things. And so for me, if this is a trajectory that I want to go in, if that's the direction that I want to go in, I need something that's going to separate me from the direction I do want to go in and the directions I don't want to go in. And so that is literally what a boundary is, and it's really important to implement them because it's so easy in this life to get derailed. It's so easy to have someone be like, "Hey, can you come over here and do this thing with me?" And you may not even be thinking it, but doing that thing is keeping you away from where you want to go, or it's distracting you from the direction that you're heading in. And so it's actually funny. My ex boyfriend, who I'm still good friends with, because I just stay friends with my exes. That's another topic that we will have to talk about on a podcast. But I don't think it's weird to be mature and have amicable relationships with people that you formerly dated, unless it was really toxic, then obviously boundaries. But my ex boyfriend, my most recent ex boyfriend, he told me that I was actually the person who taught him the true meaning of boundaries and why they're so important. And I was talking to him about the podcast, and he was like, I really think that you need to talk about that because it enlightened me so much. And now I have a whole new perspective on boundaries. And so I was like, okay, that's definitely something that I want to talk about. And so for me, again, I said I was a people pleaser. So much of my life I have spent people pleasing. I have spent trying to make sure that everybody around me is good, trying to make sure that everybody around me is happy, trying to make sure that I'm not ruffling any feathers, trying to make sure that people aren't upset with the actions that I take. All the while, I'm compromising myself in the direction that I want to go in to make sure that other people are straight. And I think that there's obviously a balance, right? You take care of the people in your life, the same people who take care of you, but there are people who may want different things than you out of life, and you may love them, but if they're going in a different direction and you're spending all your time meeting them in the direction they're going in, and it's different from the direction you want to be in, you're setting yourself up to fail. Like you're setting yourself up to not attain where you want to be and where you want to go and the goals that you've set for yourself. So it's hard. It's really hard. Setting boundaries is really hard. It's always been hard for me. It's always been hard to be like, no, I don't want to do that. Or no, I don't want to hang out with this person anymore. Or no, we're really not friends because you are not aligned to the direction that I want to go in life. And you're pulling me away from that direction. And so to me, once I set a boundary, I am very firm on that boundary. I keep my word to myself. If I say that that's not in the direction that I want to go in, if that's going to distract me, then I make sure that I stick to that. And so for me, how I even really started getting into setting boundaries was actually at a point where I had a very, very personal family relationship to me that ultimately was not aligned with how I wanted to show up in the world. And I felt like if I kept entertaining that relationship or kept spending time in that relationship or kept trying to nurture that relationship, I was getting further and further away from myself. I was getting further and further away from who I wanted to be, further and further away from how I wanted to show up. And that was really, really hard for me. That was probably one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, is putting a boundary in place with someone who has significant weight in my life, someone who genuinely, like, they are like an immediate family member. Like it is not easy. And so it is really hard to set boundaries with people where you're like, you're supposed to be in my life. We're supposed to be on the same page. You're supposed to help guide me. But in reality, that's not what's happening. And so to have to set that boundary is difficult. And that's actually where it started, as I started to realize the true benefit of setting boundaries. And it was because as soon as I set that and stood firm in it, I started to feel relief, more sense of self-worth and knowing, and alignment with the direction that I wanted to go in. I spent less time worried and feeling guilty about how someone else is feeling, and it was taking me away from what I know to be true and what I know about myself and where I want to be. And so that's really, really where it started. And since then I've learned to set additional boundaries. And so a quote that I read recently, I can't take credit for this, but someone said, the people who are upset about you having boundaries are the people who benefit from you not having one. I'm gonna say that again. The people who are upset with you having boundaries are the people who benefit from you not having one. People will reap benefits from you all day long if you let them. Like, people will literally suck the life out of you all day long if you let them. And so the people who are upset when you're putting a boundary in place and saying, hey, that's not the direction that I want to go in, are the people who benefit from you not having the boundary in the first place. And so when I started to think about it that way, I was like, the people in my life who support me, who want to see me attain the goals that I'm hoping to reach, who see the best in me, sometimes even more so than I see it for myself, are never offended and never feel a certain way about boundaries and the boundaries that I have in place. And if anything, they're so willing to adhere to them because they know that that's the direction that I want to go in. So actually the last year and a half, to give an example, or no, longer, last 2 years, ever since I moved to Atlanta. So 3 years, I pretty much don't drink. I'm not saying I'm completely sober. I'll have like a glass of wine or two if we're celebrating something, if it's a dinner, if it's an event, whatever the case is. But holistically, I don't drink. I stopped drinking alcohol. Why? Because I didn't really like it, to be honest with you. It's not that good to me. But I also just felt like I hate, when I tell you hate, waking up the next morning with a hangover and feeling like the day prior ruined my opportunity for the day following. Like, we are not promised anything. We are not promised that we are going to wake up today. We're not promised that we're going to wake up tomorrow. And the last thing that I want is to wake up tomorrow already starting on a bad note because of the decisions that I made yesterday and like physically not feeling well. And so for me, where I wanted to go, I was like, because I'm also not a morning person. So something to know about me, I really struggle to get out of bed in the morning. I am not someone who just wakes up and gets after it. Like, it takes me a second to get my day started. And so knowing that about myself and then knowing how alcohol makes me feel the next day makes it 10 times harder for me to start a day and have a good day. And so that is a boundary that I set for myself. I literally told myself, Bria, we're going to stop drinking. Like, you don't really like it anyways. You're doing it as a social thing. You're doing it because you feel like you have to. And so now you're going to stop. You're going to take a break. You're not going to drink. And it wasn't really hard for me. I stopped cold turkey. I was fine. With the exception of like, yeah, a few different things that like we celebrate in life and whatnot. And so, and I haven't. The last 3 years, I can literally count. I can tell you exactly what instances I maybe had a glass of wine. I haven't had hard liquor and I couldn't even tell you how long. And so for me, that is a boundary that I set. And it feels good to know that I've stuck by that. And it feels good to know that each day that I wake up, I'm not waking up with a hangover. I'm not waking up feeling like shit because I just spent the whole day before drinking and it didn't even really serve a purpose for me. And then I have a whole day that I'm just milking it. And then I feel like I just wasted that day. And so that's just one example of the boundary, a type of boundary that I've set, and one that I feel very proud and confident in. And to me, it's so important to feel like you are sticking to what you said that you were going to do, but also it's keeping me in the direction and alignment of what I want to accomplish. So for me, I've been really, really big on like this health and wellness journey for myself and figuring out my body, understanding it, understanding my hormones, understanding my health, like down to my gut health, my brain health, cognition, and just truly realize the impacts of alcohol on your body. And I was like, I want to be a healthier person holistically. I want to be a healthier person. I want to feel healthy. I want to look healthy. I want to be healthy in longevity. What is something that it's a consistent hindrance on health? Drinking, alcohol. And so it's like, that's just something that I'm going to have to cut out. And that's a boundary that I'm going to have to set for myself. If I want to be healthy, what will take me off the rails of health? Alcohol. If I want to start each day knowing that it is not promised and feel good about stepping into each day and capitalize on every opportunity that I get, what is going to derail me from doing that? A hangover. So setting boundaries around drinking, easy money, because I'm like, this is where I want to go. This is how I intend to get there. This is what I know is going to get me off track. So I'm just going to push that out of the way, right? And of course, give yourself grace. Like, boundaries are not going to work 24/7, 365. Like, sometimes circumstances will arise, things have to bend, or maybe you step outside of your bounds, but it's just making sure that you get back on track to go in the direction that you want to go in. Another boundary, and I'm honestly going to name a few boundaries that I've set for myself that I find to be really beneficial for me. They don't work for everybody, but they make a ton of sense to me, and the right people will respect them. So I have a rule. So I'm currently single. I'm not in a relationship. I'm very intentionally single. I've spent a lot of time with myself over the years. I've only had 2 boyfriends. My first boyfriend, I had when I was like 17. We dated till we were like 20. And then I went 7 years being single. And then had another boyfriend last year. We broke up in February of 24. And I have been very, very intentional about dating, because to me, who I spend my energy with and where I spend my time is very important to me. And also, I've been on a journey of really figuring out who I am, how I want to show up, what I do for myself, how I care about myself. And I want to make sure all those things are locked in. That way somebody treats me exactly how I treat me, right? So currently single, but something that I've had a boundary on over the last 3 years that I set for myself, especially when I moved to Atlanta, is I do not allow sleepovers with men. Do not. If you are not in a relationship with me, if you are not my boyfriend, you are not allowed to sleep over my house. I will never sleep over your house. We keep that separate. Why? Because to me, one, if I see myself being in a relationship, if I see myself having a boyfriend and eventually a fiance and a husband, one thing that's important to me is what we have being sacred and what we have being mutual and shared. To me, waking up next to someone in the morning is a relationship type of vibe. I will not wake up next to somebody who is not my man. Nor, frankly, do you deserve to wake up next to me if you are not my man. So I've had that boundary for the last 3 years. And I would say any man who's tried to take me seriously, who's tried dating me, my most recent ex, completely adhered to that boundary and respected it. My recent ex-boyfriend, him and I dated for 4 months before we became official. Not once in those 4 months did we have a sleepover. Like, I did not allow him. And we lived in the same city. We lived 25 minutes from each other. And it would be like 2 a.m. We'd be up talking all this stuff, and I would still make him go home, or I would leave. I just don't allow people to share my space, to share my sleep with me, because the track that I want to go on is someone will respect me and my home and what I want to set up for myself relationship wise enough to like share that with me. But I don't believe that I should be just waking up next to anybody and anybody should be waking up next to me. That's just a firm boundary that I have. And recently, someone who's been actually trying to date me for some time now, lives in a different city. And I had told him, I said, I have a boundary and I stick to it, but I don't have sleepovers with men who are not my boyfriend. First thing he says is, no problem. I'll get you a separate hotel, or you can stay in one of my guest rooms. You do not have to stay in the room with me. I completely respect your boundary. That is what boundaries are for. It's keeping you on track, and the right people are going to respect it. The right people are going to be like, okay, you know what? I see where you're going with this. I believe in the direction that you're heading in. I want to support you in that. I respect that boundary, right? Another boundary I have, a lot of boundaries. I also don't meet families until we're in a relationship. I do not believe that I should be besties with your sister or your brother or your parents unless we're in a relationship. Me personally, I'm a very, 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 very loyal person. Like, as soon as I meet someone and I truly love them and love their energy and like feel a level of like love for them, I'm super loyal. And so for me, that's actually a boundary I set for myself is I don't want to attach my loyalty to people who I know are not committed to me through the person that I'm dating, essentially. If I'm not in a committed relationship, I am not meeting families. I am not meeting siblings. I'm not doing any of that because to me, you have to commit to me in order for me to do all that extra work. That's work. Like, no matter how you cut or slice it, meeting families, um, siblings, whatnot, all of that is work. It is not easy. You start to build bonds, you start to build friendships when things, if and when things don't work out, it makes it that much harder to sever ties and separate. And so for me, I am not getting into any of that unless I'm in a committed relationship. And that is a boundary that I have. And I'm really, really firm in that. So I don't meet families unless we're in a relationship. I just was like that in my last relationship. And he fully respected that boundary. And I met his family once we were actually in a relationship because that is a boundary I had. Another boundary that I have outside of relationships is I actually have an app blocker on my phone. So I am I'm like a really private person. I do not post a ton on social media and I know I need to be better at that. So I'm working on it. But I am very private. I don't like putting everything on social media all the time. I truly do not believe that social media is reality. I think that this podcast is the closest that people will get to my life and my experiences because I'm sharing what I truly feel like sharing. I also believe that there's a difference in vulnerability and transparency, but that's a conversation for another time. But I just don't believe in sharing everything with social media. I don't think it's real, right? It's a highlight reel of the best moments of your life, but nobody has no idea what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm already pretty private as is. But that being said, not just me sharing, but also what I'm consuming. I know that people post and post often the best things of their lives. And I love that for them and I support them. But human nature is to look at other things and see what other people are doing. And naturally, it's a comparison. And from what I've learned and from people I know, social media is pretty fake. Like, we can own that. There are some people who are pretty good about being vulnerable and transparent on social media, but it still does not give the entire story. And so for me, it's less about posting and more about consumption. I'm very intentional and have very strong boundaries around what I consume. So I have an app blocker and I pay for a monthly subscription. And this app blocker has a schedule and it literally blocks my social media apps within certain windows of the day. So the vast majority of the day, all my social media is blocked. And then there's only 4 hours in the day that I can go on Instagram, I can go on TikTok. Other than that, the apps are blocked. Why? Because if I am adamant about what I consume and what I spend my time on, I don't want to spend so many hours in my day consuming things that are not aligned with the direction that I want to head in. I don't. And so that is a boundary that I set for myself. I adhere to it and it works really, really well for me. Personally, I think it's given me so much more time to be able to focus on the things that I really care about, like this podcast, like writing and thinking about content, creating my own content that I know that I can utilize later. And so to me, that's a really good boundary that I have. And I'm very, very adamant about sticking to that boundary. And it's honestly worked out. And I genuinely don't miss it that much. Like I do not miss social media as much as I thought I would ever since I set this boundary. So I actually use this app called Opal. If you haven't heard of it, go download it. They're not sponsoring me, but I just think that they're awesome. I should reach out to them, honestly. But I think that they're amazing, and I love the functionality of the app. And you select certain apps, and then you can select like time frames in which you want to use them, and it blocks them for you. And then anytime you go to open the app, it gives you a notification like, no, remember what you set out for yourself. And I love that. It's like it's helping me reinforce my boundaries. Boundaries are hard to set. So if you don't have the willpower or the discipline, and naturally, I think that we're fidgeters, or I'm a fidgeter. I have ADHD. So for me, sometimes I go and open my social media, not even thinking that I'm doing it. It's just a fidget, really. And so the app helps hold me accountable and helps me stick to the boundaries that I set for myself. So I really recommend it. Another thing that I do is no indulgence until my priorities are done. So I have a boundary for myself of like, I will not do indulging activities until I've completed my priorities. So usually during the week, until I'm done with my workday, I've finished cooking, cleaning, having a creative hour is when I'll like unwind and actually indulge. A lot of people unwind with wine. I am from California, so I'm just going to say it. I smoke. And I will not do that though until my day is done. Like until I know that all my priorities are out of the way is when I'll actually sit down, indulge, and like take a second for me. And I do believe there's balance. Like you don't have to be in this rigid mindset all the time of like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. There's ways to be able to like reward yourself for sticking to your boundaries. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I get all my priorities done. And at the end of the day, I'm going to roll me a little blunt. I'm going to be good. And that's it. And so that's definitely something that I'm super adamant about. I make sure that I do not do no indulgence. And also indulgence means watching TV or scrolling on my phone. Like that's indulgence for me. So like I won't sit there and like open up Instagram or anything until I know that I've gotten all my priorities done. So I actually set like my app blocker schedule for a window in the day that I think is like when I would be done and complete with everything, typically on average. Another boundary that I have is unfollowing people. That's a boundary. That's a tough one because I'm a people pleaser, like I said before. So for me, it's really difficult sometimes to unfollow people because I don't want them to take it personally. I know in the past, I've taken unfollowing personally. I'm like, why would this person unfollow me? Like, you don't like me? That's rude. But what I've learned is consumption. Like, I may not be for everyone. What I post may not be something that you want to consume. That is okay. You are totally entitled to that. And so when I flip it, I'm like, there's just certain things. I have nothing personally against you. Literally nothing. Like, it's just sometimes what you post, the things you do, the activities you're in, the words you say, they all have an impact on me, whether I like it or not. It's about consumption. And sometimes I just don't want to consume it. And that is okay. So I actually have been really strict on this lately, is unfollowing people that I just don't think are aligned with the mindset that I want to be in, where I want to go, the goals that I have. And so right now, I don't follow too many people. There's probably more people that I could unfollow, but I'm dragging my feet on it. But I'm sticking to that boundary. I think that there's just, for me, what you see, what you spend time on, where you dedicate your energy impacts you consciously or subconsciously. And so I just don't want to consume things that I'm just not aligned with. Time is the only thing that we can't get back and we can't pay for. And so I don't want to spend time consuming things that are just not aligned with where I want to go. And you may call that, being a stickler, like being rigid. But to me, I take what I do, my time, my future, my energy very seriously, very seriously. And so I do have to set those boundaries in order for me to actually get to where I want to be and do the things that I want to do and live the life that I want to live. I only get one. And I want to head in the direction that I think that this life, or head in the direction that I think I should be going in this life. And so another thing that I feel like people honestly like throw shade at me for, and it's fine. Like, I get it. Some people think this is childish. Some people think that you don't need to do all this. I personally will hit the block button so fast. So I know that some people are like, you don't have to do that. Like, you could just ignore people, or like you could just not respond. No. Mm-mm. When I feel like I don't want someone's energy in my life, when I feel like they've already crossed boundaries or taken advantage of the fact of me not having boundaries, I block you. I will block you so fast. And I am not doing that as a flex. I am not doing that as a brag. I just genuinely don't believe that I should be able to get a text or call from you at any given moment and have you throw off my energy when I'm in a good headspace, or when I'm in a zone that I want to be in, or when I'm heading in the direction that I want to go in. If a text from you or a call from you can throw me off, I don't even want it. I don't even want it. I could forgive you. I could have grace for you. I could have no beef with you. But if your energy don't sit well with me, you get blocked. I'm sorry. I got a block list like so long in my phone, and I've literally had people make fun of me for it. They're like, you what? And I'm like, it's just a boundary for me. I don't want to hear from you. I don't. I'm sorry. And if it's meant to be that we do reconnect, or that things change and we get realigned, I'll unblock you. It will address it. But I do not want something coming in and messing up my day. And I'm also just not on that whole toxic go back and forth thing. Like, when it's done, it's done. Maybe that's a Scorpio in me. But like, when I'm done, I am done. DONE. I'll spell it multiple times because I'm done. It takes a lot for me to get there because I'm so loyal. I'm like loyal to a fault sometimes. But blocking is a boundary. Like, it is a boundary for me. It's the guardrails. It'll help me from veering off track. I don't got to sit here and message you back. I don't even got to spend time thinking about what you said to me and ignoring you. Like, that is very, very important to me. Other boundaries is even just how I show up and how I think about things, even down to the food that I eat and like consumption. Everything is about consumption for me. If you can't tell, that's a common theme. But I'm just really, really big on where I spend my time, who I share my energy with, how I show up, and the alignment with direction that I'm going in. If it's not aligned, I just can't spend my time there. I can't spend my energy on it. I can't spend brain power thinking about it. I just can't. So those are like, I would say, bigger boundaries that I have. I'm also someone who doesn't just let anybody in my home. I have a boundary around that. I love hosting. I love having people over. I love sharing my space with people, but very select people. Like, do not bring your homegirls over my house that I don't know or have only met one time. Please. Do not bring your friends that I've literally never met, but they're just rolling with you and we're going to something. I just won't host then, because I do not like random energy in my home. I don't like energy in my space. That is my sanctuary. That is the one place that I feel absolutely safest. I just don't want people there unless I truly know you and feel good about your energy coming into my space. That is a boundary. Some people think that that may be extra. I don't care. It's a boundary I have. It's just the way that I operate. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of different boundaries that I have. And again, they're intended to keep me in line with where I want to go. They're not intended for me to be like, I'm prissy, I'm stuck up, I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't like you, I don't want that. That's not the intention. And that's not even the way that I'm showing up. And that's not my heart posture at all. It's, is this aligned with where I want to go? Is it aligned with where I want to go? Are they aligned with who I want to be? Are the places, the circumstances, the situations that I'm in helping me grow and progress to where I want to go? If not, I got to put a boundary in place. I have to. So for me, even like I have a good friend of mine, a boundary that she has, this isn't one that I have, but a boundary that she has is she is on a really strong spiritual journey. And she right now, in order to get closer with God and get closer in the word, she is not listening to music that talks about things that are unaligned with God. So she's listening to like more gospel. She's listening to like dope Christian rap that I was like, oh wow, like that's actually good. But she's a boundary that she set for herself is not consuming things of the world through music and making sure that she's really aligned in her walk with Christ. This is something that I'm like, I commend her for. It's not something that I would do personally. That's not my walk. But I do really respect that boundary of hers. So like she'll come into the room with me and I'll be playing music. And what do? I pause it. I literally am adherent to the boundaries that she has and has voiced to me. And I literally pause the music. And she comes in every time and she's like, Bria, like, you don't need to pause your music. We work together. So she'll like come into my office and be like, you don't need to pause your music when I come in here. And I'm like, it's not that I am ashamed of listening to this music. I'm going to listen to it as soon as you leave the room. But I respect your boundary. I respect how you feel about this and how in the commitment that you have and the discipline that you're having. And so as a friend who wants to see you grow and attain the goals that you're trying to reach, whether they're my goals or not, I'm going to support you in that. So I'm just going to pause. It's not that hard, right? Like the people who genuinely care about you are going to listen to the boundaries that you have, adhere to them, and reinforce them. They'll hold you accountable to reinforcing them. They will make sure that you are sticking on the path that you are trying to stick on. And to me, right now, I'm surrounding myself with people who know my boundaries, who understand them, and who are putting themselves in positions to ensure that they're not derailing me from them or that they're reinforcing them. Even boundaries that I had recently was this is the first time that I've like actually gotten my nails done in 3 months. I was doing press-ons myself. I got my lash extensions taken off. I did these on my own. I wanted to go through a journey of just not spending money and spending more time, energy, and dollars dedicated to this, to the podcast. So I was like, when I go get my nails done every 2 weeks, when I get my lashes done every 2 weeks, it equates to like 5 hours every 2 weeks, 10 hours a month. In addition to whatever it costs, right? Those are 10 hours that I could be using more efficiently that I'm just using with my eyes shut or my hands stuck. And so to me, even those little things, and you may think that's militant, and sometimes I am militant. Okay. Sometimes I am. That's just me. But that was just a boundary that I set for myself. I was like, I don't want to be spending all that time doing that. I'm going to cut my time down. I'm going to stop doing my lashes. I'm going to do my own nails for moments when I need them, and I'm going to let them be natural in the time being. For me, to know me is to know that's a lot. I always have cared about my nails being done, my lashes being done, everything being in tip-top shape. I'm a perfectionist to a T, so some of that was also challenging my perfectionism, but some of it was adhering to a boundary because I set a goal for myself. And I wanted to spend more time on this. Honestly, that's really what it came down to. So I hope in hearing this that you're thinking, okay, these boundaries that I'm setting for myself is not to make me cold from the world. It's not to take me away from people. It's not to push anybody or anything away. It's to keep myself in line with where I want to go, with the things that I truly care about, with the people who mean the most to me, right? Because if we're not setting boundaries, you will get distracted. You will get pulled from the things that you're trying to do just by association and doing things with other people. You will lose sight of the direction that you're trying to go in if you don't have boundaries. Like you are on you got a one-way ticket, fast track. You are on this train and you are going in the direction that you want to go in. And if you do not have guardrails, it'll take nothing for that thing to come off the tracks. Nothing. So you need to make sure that you actually set these boundaries and you stick to them. Stick to them. They're helping you get to where you want to go. They are not a hindrance, okay? Me not being on social media for 10 hours a day and only doing it 4 hours a day, who does that benefit? Me. So I'm going to stick to it. If I don't want to sleep over a man's house and I don't want a man to sleep over my house, if he's not my man, who am I benefiting? Me. The only people who would benefit from me having that boundary or for me not having that boundary are the people who are taking advantage of it. Are going to be the men who are like, what the hell? You're not going to let me sleep over or I'm not going to sleep over. I'm going to tell you something right now. My husband would not be tripping off that. The husband that I am manifesting, he is not going to be tripping off that. He's going to respect that. So if you have an issue with it, thank you. You are not my husband. So I really, really believe in boundaries. I think that they are so important. I believe that they're very difficult, though. I talked about some that are a little bit easier to implement. It is extremely difficult when you have to implement boundaries with people that you really, really care about, with people that you believe are supposed to be a part of your life, with people who hold major roles in your life. So when I'm setting a boundary with a parent, that's hard. That's not easy. That's not easy work, right? But for me, what I do know is people will be aligned with what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to accomplish if they truly, genuinely want me to fulfill and see those things. So it's not easy work. It can be hard sometimes. It can be difficult, but it's worth it for you. It's most important for you. The biggest person who will benefit from having them is you, nobody else. And honestly, the people who really care will listen to them. They'll reinforce them. They'll help you set them, honestly. And so today, the B is for boundaries. And I hope that you heard all of this, maybe took away some boundaries that you think you want to implement yourself. Maybe I put you onto something. Maybe you just thought of something that I haven't thought of. Or maybe you have a really strong boundary that I haven't considered. I want to know. So message me on Instagram, comment on this on YouTube, leave a review on the platform that you're streaming on, and let me know either what boundary you took away that you're like, oh, I kind of want to do that, or I like that. Or if you have a boundary that I hadn't mentioned that you think has really worked for you and has been valuable, because I want to hear it. I love learning and I want to know what boundaries y'all have put in place that have been effective. So please let me know. But also just let me know how you felt about hearing this and about having this conversation. I genuinely care about your perspective. I genuinely care about the things that you hear from me, and I want to make sure that they're meaningful and insightful. So like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. And remember, put your boundaries in place. Put your boundaries in place. You will thank yourself. Your future self will thank you for doing it. So without further ado, thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you for being here for me. And until next time, put those boundaries in place. Don't play around with those boundaries. Okay. Y'all have a good one.